Hey everyone, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
So, think about this for a second. Working your fingers to the bone, playing by all the rules society sets out, and still, maybe tonight, you don't have a safe place to actually sleep.
Yeah, it's a really tough thought.
And it's not some, dystopian fantasy. It's the quiet, often unseen reality for, well, a growing number of people right here in America.
What's particularly unsettling, I think, is how this struggle is happening in our own communities,
Mm-hmm.
often hidden right in plain sight. It really forces us to rethink what we thought we knew about who experiences homelessness and why.
Absolutely. And this deep dive into Brian Goldstone's There Is No Place for Us, it actually comes as a direct request from our friend Celestial Circle Dance over on YouTube. So shout out to you.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it's a great suggestion.
It really is. This book, it's a powerful piece of contemporary social commentary, really ethical journalism. It dives deep into those hidden realities of working homelessness in America.
And hey, if this topic sparks your interest, if it resonates, please hit that like button and subscribe for more in-depth analyses like this one. We'd really appreciate it.
Goldstone has definitely crafted something impactful here.
Yeah.
Jonathan Wilson Hartgrove mentions in the foreword, that it's a book really poised to shift the national conversation.
Yeah, I felt that too. And you can find a link to grab your own copy of There Is No Place for Us on Amazon. It's right there in the description below.
Good.
What's so compelling, I think, about Goldstone's work is how it peels back the layers of the stories we tell ourselves, about work, about housing. It pushes us to really examine what homelessness even means today.
Exactly.
We'll be pulling directly from his compelling journalistic accounts and his insightful analysis, looking at individuals and families grappling with housing insecurity, with homelessness.
And Rachel Aviv notes this in her foreword, too, how his approach embodies this really deeply empathetic and ethical way of bearing witness to these struggles. It's not just about the numbers.
Not at all.
And the way Goldstone structured the book is also quite telling, I found. The progression through those sections, equilibrium, storm, possibility, rupture, and then the new American homeless. It really guides you through understanding how these seemingly stable situations can just unravel.
Right. How you get from equilibrium to, well, rupture.
Precisely how people end up in such precarious circumstances.
Exactly. So our goal, our mission in this deep dive is to really get under the skin of this issue of working homelessness, just as Goldstone presents it.
Okay.
We want to unpack those underlying systemic factors at play and, maybe most importantly, bring to the forefront the very human stories that so often get lost behind the statistics.
Okay, let's really get into this then. The core argument that just jumps out from Goldstone's work is this significant and growing number of individuals and families who are actively working, but still find themselves without a stable home. This isn't about a lack of effort or, some detachment from the world of work. It's different.
That's such a crucial point, isn't it? Goldstone is really challenging that older, maybe outdated understanding of homelessness, that Peter Rossi model from the late 80s, which often framed it as something separate from work.
Right, unconnected.
Yeah, but what we're seeing now, what Goldstone documents, it paints a very different picture.
And what makes this even more jarring is where this rise in working homelessness is concentrated. It's in many of our wealthiest and most rapidly developing cities.
Yeah.
Places like New York, D.C., Seattle, Austin, Phoenix, Denver, Nashville. These are booming economies, right? Low unemployment, lots of corporate growth.
It creates this really disturbing paradox.
Totally. It completely flips the script. You'd expect that in areas with such economic vitality, people would be, well, thriving, or at least secure.
But Goldstone makes a powerful case that it's often these very forces of prosperity that are pushing people out. It's less about them falling into homelessness and more about being actively displaced.
Exactly. It really forces us to confront the widening chasm between what people are actually earning and the truly exorbitant cost of housing in these so-called thriving areas.
And the numbers Goldstone lays out are just staggering. I mean, consider this. There is not a single state, not one metropolitan area, not even a single county anywhere in the U.S. where someone working full-time at the local minimum wage can afford a basic two-bedroom apartment.
Wow. Let that sink in.
Yeah. What does that say about the fundamental relationship between work and survival in our country?
It really highlights the sheer depth of this unaffordability crisis.
Mm.
And then you have the term Goldstone uses severely cost-burdened households.
Right.
He points out that over 11.4 million low-income households are in this situation. That means more than 78% of their entire income is going just to keep a roof over their heads.
78%.
Yeah. What kind of stability or opportunity can possibly exist when that's the reality? You're just constantly on the brink.
And it's not like incomes have kept pace with this, right? I mean, since 1985, rent prices across the nation have just skyrocketed. They've outpaced income growth by an unbelievable 325%.
325%.
It's like trying to climb a ladder that's constantly getting taller while the rungs stay the same distance apart. It feels impossible.
It really compels us to ask some tough questions about the sustainability of our economic models, doesn't it?
Definitely.
Goldstone highlights that nearly half of American workers earn a median hourly wage of just $10.22,
And 22.
which, to put that in perspective, that's below the federal poverty line for a family of three. How can we expect people to maintain housing security on wages like that?
You can't. And for individuals on fixed incomes, like folks receiving supplemental security income, SSI, it's even more bleak. Goldstone points out that the average rent now consumes about 142% of their already meager monthly income of $943.
142%. It's literally impossible.
It's a mathematical impossibility to secure stable housing under those circumstances. There's just no way.
And the specific examples Goldstone provides, they really bring the weight of these statistics to life. This concept of a housing wage, the hourly wage needed to afford basic rent.
Yeah, that was striking.
It's particularly telling. In Atlanta, he says it's nearly $30 an hour. Meanwhile, the state minimum wage is still hovering around $7.25.
$30 versus $7.25.
Right. And the sheer number of hours someone in Boston or San Francisco would have to work at minimum wage, he calculates 141 and 160 hours per week, respectively, just to afford a modest two-bedroom apartment.
Per week. That's more than full-time. That's like multiple full-time jobs.
It paints a picture of utter exhaustion and relentless struggle. It really makes you wonder about the value we place on people's time and well-being, you know?
Absolutely. And what makes There Is No Place for Us so powerful, I think, is that it doesn't just present these overwhelming numbers. Goldstone masterfully weaves in the human element. He chronicles the experiences of various families right there in Metro Atlanta. And he does it in a way that, respects their privacy, avoids unnecessary detail, but still conveys the profound precariousness of their lives.
What struck me was how Goldstone illustrated the razor-thin margins these families are operating on.
Yeah.
He shares the story of a mother, right? Someone who had dedicated her life to caring for others through her work,
Yeah.
now facing homelessness with her own children. And her just bewildered question, how does that even happen? It speaks volumes about the erosion of the social safety net.
It really does. And the image he paints of working families forced to live in their cars, seeking just a sliver of security in designated safe parking lots, it's just heartbreaking. Then you have the fact that over half of the individuals seeking assistance from homeless shelters are actually employed, often in low-wage jobs, but employed nonetheless.
It completely shatters that old stereotype of who experiences homelessness. Goldstone really underscores how a minor, unexpected setback, something many of us might just consider a temporary inconvenience, like a car repair or a child needing extra care.
Yeah, just life happening.
Exactly. How that can become a complete catastrophe when you're already teetering on the edge because of these outrageous housing costs.
Yeah.
It just highlights the lack of any real financial buffer for so many working families.
We get these brief but really impactful glimpses into the lives of individuals like Britt and her mother Cass. It underscored these multi-generational cycles of hardship and the crucial role that community support networks play. Often, they're the only lifeline these folks have.
And Carr's experiences, trying to juggle the immense responsibilities of work and motherhood under the constant cloud of housing insecurity, that really brings home how these pressures don't just deplete financial resources. They deplete those absolutely vital emotional resources like patience, affection, the ability to nurture.
That's such a good point. The invisible toll.
Yeah, it makes you think about that invisible toll this takes on families, on kids.
Then there are stories like Maurice and Natalia's, a couple who might seem stable from the outside, but their vulnerability to the volatile housing market just shows how widespread this crisis can be. It's not confined to one specific demographic or situation.
No, it cuts across different lines. And Michelle's ongoing struggle trying to maintain housing while dealing with the everyday challenges of work and personal life, it just further reinforces that these aren't isolated incidents.
Right.
They are symptoms of a much larger, deeply ingrained problem.
It's so important to recognize, as Goldstone emphasizes, that these aren't just unfortunate anomalies. They are representative of a significant and growing trend across the country.
Hmm.
And this naturally leads us to look at the deeper systemic issues and, well, the policy failures that are fueling this crisis.
Exactly. Goldstone doesn't shy away from examining the inadequacy of current tenant protections, which leaves so many working families incredibly vulnerable to eviction with very little recourse, and the impact of gentrification. While it's often framed as a sign of economic progress, it clearly has a devastating effect on long-term residents and the availability of genuinely affordable housing options, pushing people out.
He uses these really stark examples of the overwhelming demand for housing assistance. You see these events in places like East Point, Georgia, or Dallas. Thousands of people lining up, sometimes overnight,
Just for a chance.
just for the slim chance to apply for a limited number of housing vouchers. It's such a powerful visual representation of the immense unmet need out there.
And when we think about urban redevelopment, the story of Techwood's demolition and the creation of Centennial Place in Atlanta is particularly instructive, isn't it?
It really is.
Because while it brought significant private investment, the number of original residents who were actually able to return was incredibly small. It forces us to question who truly benefits from this kind of so-called revitalization.
Yeah, who is the progress for? Then there's the complex issue of the low-income housing tax credit properties, the LIHTC ones.
Right, LAHTC.
While these are crucial for creating affordable housing, Goldstone points out a significant challenge. The affordability of these units is often temporary, usually for about a 30-year period.
Okay.
And as many of these properties reach that milestone, there's this looming crisis where these units could just revert to market rate rents, which would further shrink the already limited affordable housing stock.
Wow, so the problem could actually get worse soon?
Exactly. And Atlanta's projections in this area are particularly concerning, according to the book.
What's also critical to understand, and he touches on this, is how the very definition of homeless used by many agencies can inadvertently exclude families.
So,
Well, families living in really precarious situations, like extended stay hotels or maybe doubled up with other families in overcrowded conditions, they might not fit the strict definition.
so they fall through the cracks.
Exactly. This definitional barrier can prevent them from accessing crucial aid and support services they desperately need.
And Goldstone also sheds light on the role that private equity firms and large corporate landlords play in making this crisis worse.
Yeah, that was eye-opening.
Their business model often involves acquiring properties and aggressively increasing rents, essentially treating housing as just a purely profit-driven commodity rather than, a fundamental human need.
Right, it shifts the dynamic completely.
Amidst all these significant challenges, though, Goldstone also makes sure to highlight the inspiring examples of community support and resilience that he witnessed.
Which is important.
Yeah, it is. We see instances like Britt, who we mentioned earlier, offering shelter to friends in need. It demonstrates that powerful spirit of mutual aid that often emerges in times of crisis.
And the emergence of tenant advocacy groups like the Housing Justice League you mentioned, it shows that people aren't just passive victims of these systemic forces.
No, they're fighting back.
They're organizing, they're fighting for their rights. Even though Goldstone's focus in this book is maybe more on documenting the individual experiences than the organizing itself.
Right. And individuals like Laquana L.A. Pink Alexander, who work tirelessly on the ground providing direct support and advocacy for those experiencing homelessness, they really embody the crucial role of community-based solutions, people helping people.
Definitely.
So as we begin to bring this deep dive to a close, the key takeaways from Brian Goldstone's There Is No Place for Us are, well, they're undeniably clear, I think.
Yeah.
We are facing a significant and often healing crisis of working homelessness. It's driven by these deeply rooted systemic issues that are making housing increasingly unaffordable for a large and growing segment of our population.
And it's vital that we remember the profound human impact.
Right.
So powerfully conveyed through the individual stories Goldstone shares. These aren't just abstract data points.
Yeah.
They are real people, families, communities facing incredibly difficult and often destabilizing circumstances every single day.
Ultimately, There Is No Place for Us serves as a powerful challenge to our assumptions about homelessness. It compels us to confront a reality that often remains unseen, but has these huge, far-reaching consequences for individuals and really for the very fabric of our society.
This leaves us with a really important question for you, the listener, to consider. After taking this deep dive into these realities, what does the concept of home truly signify in America today?
Hmm.
And what fundamental shifts in our thinking and maybe in our policies are truly necessary to ensure that a safe and stable home is a possibility for everyone who contributes their labor to our communities?
Yeah.
It really makes you reflect on the ethics of economic growth when its benefits aren't shared equitably, and our collective responsibility to assure basic human needs are met.
That's a powerful thought to end on. For those of you who want to delve much deeper into these critical issues and the incredibly moving individual stories within, we strongly encourage you to purchase Brian Goldstone's There Is No Place for Us.
Highly recommend it.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll find that Amazon link conveniently located in the description below. And we also urge you to maybe seek out and support local organizations in your own communities that are working on the front lines of addressing housing insecurity.
Yeah. See what's happening locally.
You might be surprised by the opportunities to get involved and make a difference, even in small ways. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks, everyone.